The resonant spire of Catheria Prime was a monument to stillness, a colossal, crystalline mountain hollowed out by geologic time and meticulous engineering. Within its grand chamber, light did not simply illuminate. It was a language, a physical manifestation of thought and political will. Beams of focused luminescence, colored by the emotional state of the high resonators, crisscrossed the cavernous space, painting shifting mosaics on the multifaceted walls. For cycles, the dominant color had been a deep, anxious violet, the hue of uncertainty. Tonight, it was shot through with angry crimson, the shade of impending, ill-advised action. High resonator Vorlag felt the discordant frequencies in his very silicate structure, a grating hum that vibrated up from the polished obsidian floor and into the core of his being. He stood before the conclave's central data confluence, a swirling nebula of holographic light, his own placid blue aura a lonely island in a sea of agitated color. The subject, as it had been for far too long, was humanity. They were the galaxy's newest enigma, a species that had burst forth from a forgotten stellar nursery with a velocity that defied all known models of societal development. They were not conquerors, not in the traditional sense. They claimed no territory through force, subjugated no species, and yet their sphere of influence expanded like a crystallizing frost, silent and inexorable. They arrived, they observed, they offered trade or knowledge or assistance, and then they moved on, leaving behind systems subtly altered, their inhabitants now orbiting a new, human-centric reality. This passive expansion was more terrifying to the ancient empires of the Galactic Compact than any armada. A foe with warships could be met with warships. But how did one fight an idea? How did one wage war against a philosophy that spread not by the sword but by a quiet, unanswerable logic? Their silence is a weapon, Resonator Kayles projected, his crimson light flaring with such intensity that it cast sharp, dancing shadows behind Vorlag. Kayles was a traditionalist, forged in the old wars, his crystalline form sharply faceted and edged, a being built for ideological combat. They sit on the edge of the void brood front, a buffer zone of incalculable strategic value, and they do nothing. They watch our fleets burn, they watch our colony worlds go dark, and they offer only observation. It is an insult, it is a passive act of aggression. The data confluence swirled, displaying the human sphere. It was a small, unassuming bubble of space, yet it bordered the encroaching blight of the void brood, a rapacious, non-sentient swarm that consumed all life and matter in its path. The Compact had been fighting a losing war against the brood for generations. The emergence of humanity, with its seemingly advanced technology and its strategically vital location, had at first been seen as a potential salvation. Now it was viewed as a source of profound frustration. Aggression, Kayles, implies intent, Vorlag resonated, his own blue light a calming balm against the chamber's rising heat. We have no evidence of hostile intent. We have only evidence of non-participation. They have violated no treaty, for they have signed none. They have crossed no border, for they have recognized none. They exist, and their existence inconveniences our war effort. That is the sum of our grievance. An inconvenience, Kayles pulsed, his light strobing. The fall of the Cygnus Shield worlds was an inconvenience. The loss of the Outer Arm fleets was an inconvenience. We are bleeding, Vorlag, we are dying, and they possess resources, shipyards, technologies. They are a well of potential strength that we are forbidden to tap because of your philosophical dithering. The Compact is tired of waiting. The motion has been carried. We will deliver the ultimatum. Vorlag's light dimmed, the blue deepening to a somber indigo. He had feared this. The Galactic Compact, a ponderous alliance of ancient species, had finally lost its patience. They had voted to compel humanity into the war to force their hand. A demonstration fleet, a grand armada composed of a dozen member species' proudest warships, was being assembled at the edge of human space. It was a show of force meant to awe, to intimidate, to make the cost of refusal clear. Vorlag saw it not as a demonstration of strength, but as a declaration of catastrophic ignorance. You seek to command the tide by shouting at it, Vorlag said, his resonance low and heavy. We do not understand them. Their technological signatures are a paradox. Some of their ships register on our deepest scans as primitive, fusion-driven vessels barely capable of sustained interstellar travel. Others leave no signature at all. They are ghosts in the void, their drives operating on principles of physics our most advanced institutes cannot even model. One of our long-range reconnaissance drones wreck. Ordered a human freighter, freighter, translating from one point to another across a distance of a light-year instantaneously. No warp bubble, no wormhole entry, no energy discharge. It was simply there, and then it was elsewhere. How do you threaten a species that can ignore the very fabric of space-time? They bleed, Kayles retorted, his crimson light unwavering. We have their biological data. They are soft, fragile. Carbon-based, water-dependent with laughably short lifespans. Their minds are chaotic, driven by unstable chemical reactions they call emotions. They are not gods, Vorlag. They are clever animals who have stumbled upon a few tricks. The fleet we have assembled will be a lesson in true power. It will be the largest concentration of force this sector has seen since the Unification Wars. When they look upon it, they will understand their place. They will comply. Vorlag turned his focus back to the swirling data. He called up the file on the human diplomatic envoy that had, against all reason, just entered Cathar space. A single vessel broadcasting standard, almost quaint diplomatic codes. It had not asked for permission. It had simply announced its peaceful intentions and its destination, Catharia Prime. It was a move of either supreme confidence or supreme foolishness, and with humanity it was impossible to know which. And what of their envoy? Vorlag asked. They send a single ship to our very core even as we prepare a battle fleet on their border. Does that not strike you as odd? It is as if they are utterly unconcerned by our military might, as if they are operating in a context we cannot perceive. It is arrogance, Kayles declared. The final, fatal flaw of a young species. They believe their little tricks make them invulnerable. They will learn otherwise. The compact fleet will make its final jump in one cycle. The ultimatum will be delivered, and the humans will either bend or they will break. There is no other outcome. But Vorlag felt a cold dread resonate through him, a feeling akin to the deep, silent pressure before a crystal shatters. He looked at the image of the lone human ship, a vessel designated the Pathfinder **. It was a simple, unadorned ovoid of a ship, gray and unremarkable. It possessed no visible weapon emplacements, no ostentatious displays of power. It looked like a transport, a courier, a vessel of no consequence. And yet it sailed directly towards the heart of an empire preparing to threaten its entire species with annihilation. He could not shake the feeling that the Galactic Compact was not delivering a lesson. It was walking into one. The humans were calm, they were logical, but above all they were unknown. And in the vast, cold darkness of the galaxy, the unknown was the only thing an ancient empire truly had to fear. The crimson light of the chamber felt like a premonition, the color of blood that had not yet been spilled. The days that followed were a symphony of rising tension. Vorlag monitored the two approaching forces on the main data confluence, the lumbering, magnificent beast of the Compact's demonstration fleet, a sprawling constellation of metallic fury, and the single, serene point of light that was the human ship, the Pathfinder **. The contrast was almost absurd. The fleet was a statement, a shout of power that echoed in subspace, its energy signatures blooming across the sector. The Pathfinder was a whisper, a silent, steady presence that simply was. It did not deviate. It did not accelerate or decelerate. It moved with the implacable, unnerving certainty of a celestial body following its orbit. On the command deck of the compact flagship, the Indomitable will Admiral Tikal of the Vilasari watched the human vessel resolve on his main view screen. Tikal was a creature of war, his chitinous exoskeleton scarred from 100 battles, his multifaceted eyes missing no detail. His ship was the pinnacle of Vilasari engineering, a jagged mountain of armor and weapon arrays, its forward armament capable of cracking a small moon. Around him, the flagships of the other compact members held formation, the elegant blade-like cruisers of the Synthal, the massive, spherical dreadnoughts of the Genar, the crystalline lattice ships of his own Cathar allies. It was a fleet designed to crush empires, and they were arrayed against a single, gray, egg-shaped vessel. All ships report readiness, Tikal's voice hissed through the bridge, a sound like grinding stone. Weapons systems are charged, targeting solutions are locked. We are prepared to enforce the will of the Galactic Compact. His communications officer swiveled one of his many eye stalks towards him. Admiral, the human vessel is hailing us. Standard diplomatic channel, unencrypted. Tikal let out a chittering sound of contempt. Unencrypted, they wish for the entire sector to witness their humiliation. Put them through. The view screen flickered, replaced by the image of a human. It was a female of the species, her features symmetrical and placid. She wore a simple dark blue uniform devoid of rank insignia or decoration. Her hair was dark and pulled back from her face, and her eyes, a startlingly clear shade of green, regarded the Admiral with an unnerving stillness. There was no fear in them, no anger, no emotion that Tikal could readily identify. It was like looking at the surface of a deep, undisturbed pool of water. This is Ambassador Eva Rostova of the Human Systems Alliance vessel Pathfinder **, she said, her voice calm and even, the universal translator rendering it without inflection. I am addressing the commander of the assembled fleet. To whom do I have the honor of speaking? I am Admiral Tikal of the Vilasari Hegemony, Supreme Commander of the Compact Enforcement Armada. Tikal boomed, his posture radiating dominance. You are in violation of regulated space. You will halt your vessel and prepare to be boarded. Admiral Tikal, the human Rostova replied, her expression unchanged. I must respectfully disagree with your assessment. We are not in violation of any regulation recognized by the Human Systems Alliance. We are on a diplomatic mission to Catharia Prime at the implied invitation of the Cathar Conclave. Your fleet, however, is an unsanctioned military gathering on the border of our sovereign space. It is an act of overt intimidation. I ask you to stand down and disperse your ships. The sheer audacity of the statement sent a ripple of disbelief through Tikal's bridge crew. Tikal himself felt a surge of fury. You are in no position to make demands, Ambassador. You see the power arrayed against you. This is not a negotiation. I have a message for your alliance, a mandate from the Galactic Compact. Your species will lend its full industrial and military capacity to the war against the Void Brood. You will accept a compact liaison to oversee your compliance. You will cease your unsanctioned expansion. These are the terms. Refusal is not an option. For the first time, a flicker of something passed through Ambassador Rostova's eyes. It was not fear. Tikal thought it might be disappointment. Humanity does not respond to threats, Admiral, she said, her voice losing none of its calm. Coercion is a tool of inefficient civilizations. It is a failure of communication and imagination. We have studied the Void Brood. We do not believe your current strategy of attrition can succeed. We are developing a different solution. Your solution is irrelevant, Tikal snarled. You will obey the compact or your ship will be made an example of. This is your final warning. The human ambassador looked past Tikal as if seeing every ship in his fleet, every crew member, every loaded weapon. Her gaze seemed to carry an impossible weight, a profound and ancient sorrow. I see, she said softly. You have chosen to close the path of discourse. Then we must offer a different kind of communication. We have no desire to harm you, Admiral, none of you, but we will not be coerced. We will not be threatened. Please, for the final time, order your fleet to stand down. Do not force our hand. Your hand, Tikal laughed, a harsh, grating sound. What hand do you have to play, little human? You're one unarmed ship against the might of the galaxy's oldest empires. Fire a warning shot, he commanded his weapons officer. Across her bow, let her smell the ozone of her own impending destruction. Admiral, I must urge you to reconsider, Rostova said, her voice still impossibly serene. This action will have consequences you cannot foresee. I foresee your vessel being turned into incandescent vapor, Tikal retorted. Fire! On the bridge of the asterisk Indomitable will asterisk, the weapons officer initiated the sequence. A lance of pure, searing plasma, a sliver of a captive star, erupted from the flagship's forward emitter, streaking across the void towards the Pathfinder asterisk. It was a message of overwhelming power, a promise of what was to come, but it never arrived. The lance of plasma, an unstoppable force of physics, simply ceased to be. It did not detonate, it was not deflected by a shield. One moment it was a roaring spear of incandescent energy, and the next it was nothing. The space where it had been was just empty, black, and silent. A stunned silence fell over Tikal's bridge. His officers stared at their consoles, their multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. Report, Tikal demanded, his voice tight. Energy weapon. Vanished, Admiral, the officer stammered. No impact, no shield flare, no energy dissipation, all telemetry from the projectile just stopped, it's gone. On the view screen, Ambassador Rostova's image remained. She had not flinched, she had not even blinked. She simply watched them, her expression one of quiet resignation. The path of violence is a logical fallacy, she stated, her voice now carrying a new resonance, a quality of profound, unshakable authority. It presumes that destruction is a viable method for achieving a desired outcome. It is not. It is merely the termination of potential. We will demonstrate. From the gray, featureless hull of the Pathfinder asterisk, something emerged. It was not a weapon. It was a wave. A subtle, shimmering distortion in the fabric of space, barely visible to the naked eye, but a roaring tsunami on the ship's sensor arrays. It was not an energy wave. It was not kinetic. The sensors struggled to classify it, spitting out nonsensical data about quantum entanglement, informational density, and conceptual harmonics. The wave washed over the compact fleet, passing through their shields, their hulls, their very atoms as if they weren't there. It was silent, it was gentle, and it was absolute. On the bridge of the asterisk, Indomitable will asterisk, Admiral Tikal felt it. It was not a physical impact. It was a sensation in his mind, in the core of his being where his will to fight resided. The rage that had fueled him for his entire life, the glorious purpose of conquest and command, the righteous fury of the soldier, it evaporated. It did not fade, it was simply gone, as if a switch had been flipped in his soul. He looked at his weapons console, at the button that would unleash his ship's main battery, and he felt nothing. The desire to press it was gone. The entire concept of firing on the human ship now felt alien, bizarre, like a half-remembered dream of a barbaric past. He looked around his bridge. His crew, moments before a finely honed instrument of war, were now staring at their stations with a profound sense of confusion. His weapons officer was looking at his firing controls with the detached curiosity one might have for a strange piece of art. His navigator was gazing at the star charts, but not for tactical positioning. He seemed to be lost in the sheer beauty of the constellations. The entire martial imperative of the crew, the very reason for their existence on this warship, had been surgically, cleanly, and completely removed from their consciousness. "Admiral," his first officer asked, his voice soft, hesitant. What were we doing?" Tikal looked at the human ambassador on the screen. He opened his mandibles to speak, to issue a command, but no command came. The fire was gone. I don't remember," he said, the words feeling foreign and heavy. He felt no shame, no defeat. He only felt a deep, pervasive calm and a quiet, nagging question. Why had they ever thought violence was an answer? From his observation chamber in the resonance spire, Vorlag watched the data stream with a horror that transcended fear. He saw the energy weapon from the asterisk indomitable will asterisk vanish. He saw the strange, unclassifiable wave emanate from the Pathfinder asterisk. And then he watched as the entire compact armada, the most powerful military force in the sector, simply stopped. One by one, the energy signatures of their weapons systems winked out. Their engines shifted from combat-ready to idle. Their tight, aggressive formations loosened, the ships beginning to drift apart like a scattering of autumn leaves on a placid pond. Their communications channels, which had been crackling with battle cries and tactical jargon, fell silent, replaced by confused, questioning chatter. A report flashed across Vorlag's console from the Cathar liaison aboard the asterisk indomitable will asterisk. The text was disjointed, a stream of pure, unadulterated bewilderment. Hostility ceased, the will to fight is gone, not suppressed, erased. The crew is calm, unharmed. They are contemplating the futility of conflict. Admiral Tikal is discussing poetry with his communications officer. The fleet is inert. It is pacified. We have not been defeated. We have been redefined. Vorlag stared at the screen, at the listless, drifting armada. He looked at the single, small, gray ship that had accomplished this. It had not fired a shot. It had not launched a missile. It had not deployed a single fighter. It had ended the confrontation by removing the very concept of confrontation from the minds of its opponents. It was not warfare. It was a form of conceptual engineering, a rewriting of the foundational axioms of sentient thought. It was the kind of power Vorlag could not even begin to comprehend. It was the power to nullify aggression itself. A grim, prophetic thought echoed in his mind, something he knew would be quoted in the historical archives for millennia to come. The thought was so clear, so stark, it felt like a pronouncement from the universe itself. One look at this warship, and the enemy fleet vanished. Not its ships, not its crews, its enmity. And that was infinitely more terrifying and infinitely more profound. The humans had not come to fight, they had come to teach. And the first lesson was that the compact's understanding of power was a child scrawling in the face of true mastery. The crimson light of Kaylee's anger had faded from the chamber, replaced by a deep, pervasive, and early silent violet. The age of arrogance was over. The aftermath in the resonance spire was a study in stunned silence. The crimson light of resonator Kaylee's had entirely guttered out, leaving his crystalline form a dull, lusterless gray, the color of shock and invalidated belief. The other members of the conclave pulsed with a chaotic spectrum of disoriented violet and fearful amber. Only Vorlag's calm, somber blue remained, a steady beacon in the swirling tide of confusion. The data confluence endlessly replayed the final moments of the confrontation. The silent wave, the flickering out of 1,000 weapon systems, the great armada drifting like so much dead metal. It was a recording of a paradigm's death. Kaylee's finally managed to project a weak, fractured resonance. What was that? A psychic weapon? A mimetic virus? It was not a weapon, Vorlag replied, his voice echoing in the vast, silent chamber. A weapon destroys, this created. It created a new state of being for the crews of those ships. It created peace. A forced, imposed peace, but peace nonetheless. They did not attack the hardware, they altered the software of the mind. They violated them, Kaylee's flared, a flicker of his old crimson returning. They reached into the minds of compact soldiers and neutered their very nature. It is the most profound violation imaginable. Is it? Vorlag countered, his blue light intensifying, washing over Kaylee's weak protest. Is it more of a violation than a plasma bolt that would have boiled their ships and crews into expanding gas? They were given a choice. They were warned repeatedly. They chose violence. The humans responded not with greater violence, but with the negation of violence itself. Which path is the more civilized? Which is the more ethical? Which is the more powerful? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. The compact had brought its ultimate expression of power, overwhelming physical force, and the humans had met it with an ultimate expression of their own power, overwhelming philosophical force. The encounter had not been a battle, it had been a categorical refutation. A calm, clear chime echoed through the spire. The human envoy, the Pathfinder Asterisk, was requesting permission to enter high orbit around K-Theria Prime. It was not a request born of necessity. Vorlag knew they could have appeared there at will. It was a gesture of respect, an offering of diplomatic courtesy in the wake of an event that had shattered all galactic precedent. It was a sign that they still wished to talk. "Let them come," Vorlag resonated, his voice carrying the full authority of the high resonator. He turned his crystalline gaze towards Kaylee's. "The time for threats is over, Kaylee's. The time for listening has begun. We stand on the precipice of a new reality. We can either try to understand it, or we can be rendered obsolete by it. I, for one, choose to understand." The meeting took place not in the formal, imposing resonance spire, but in a smaller, quieter chamber of contemplation near the planet's surface, a grotto of glowing crystals and gently flowing subterranean rivers. It was a neutral space, a place of reflection. Ambassador Eva Rostova stood before Vorlag and the assembled conclave. She was not flanked by guards, she was alone. Her calm was not a facade, it was the very essence of her being. She stood amidst the towering crystalline forms of the Cathar as if she were taking a walk in a garden. "We regret the necessity of the demonstration," she began, her voice resonating softly in the chamber. "It is not our wish to impose our philosophy on others. However, the Human Systems Alliance operates on a foundational principle, the right to self-determination. Your compact's ultimatum was a direct threat to that principle. We could not allow it to stand." "You speak of philosophy," Vorlag resonated, his light a deep, inquisitive sapphire. "Your demonstration was an act of technology so far beyond our comprehension that it may as well be magic. You wield the ability to rewrite the sentient mind." "We do not see it as rewriting," Rostova corrected gently. "We see it as a resonant de-escalation. Aggression, the will to dominate, the desire for violent conflict. These are chaotic, high-energy states of consciousness. They are inefficient, destructive feedback loops. Our technology, what you might call a conceptual harmonizer, does not add anything to a mind. It simply introduces a harmonic frequency that calms the chaos. It allows a consciousness to settle into its baseline state of rational self-interest and curiosity. We did not remove the soldiers' free will, we simply removed the neurological noise that was preventing them from exercising it. The concept was staggering. Humanity did not fight wars, they cured the condition of wanting to fight them. Their approach to conflict was not military, it was medical. "And what of the void brood?" Kaylee's interjected, his voice still strained. "You sta. And by and watch it consume worlds. Is that your rational solution, to let the galaxy burn because you find our methods inefficient?" "The void brood is not a problem that can be solved with warships," Rostova stated plainly. "You have been firing weapons at it for a century. Your fleets are shattered, your resources depleted, and the brood is stronger than ever. This is because you have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of your enemy. You believe you are fighting a fire, and so you bring water. But you are not fighting a fire. You are fighting the tide of an ocean. Your methods are not merely inefficient, they are irrelevant." She gestured, and a small device in her hand projected a holographic image into the center of the grotto. It was a swirling, complex model of the void brood's swarm intelligence, rendered in breathtaking detail. It was not the chaotic jumble of signals the compact's own analysts had detected, but an intricate, layered pattern like a symphony. "We did not ignore the brood," Rostova explained. "We listened. For a long time. Your fleets are loud, Admiral Tikal's ships were a cacophony of electromagnetic and subspace noise. But when one listens in the quiet, one begins to hear things. The brood is not a single entity. It is a collection of countless biomechanical organisms slave to a single repeating signal, a signal of immense power and antiquity. It is not a signal of command, as you have always assumed. It is not an order to consume. We have spent the last decade of our expansion deciphering it, and we have discovered its true nature." She manipulated the hologram. The complex patterns simplified, resolving into a core waveform, a singular, repeating message that had been broadcast across the void for millions of years. "It is a warning," Rostova said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. The signal driving the void brood is a distress call, a final, desperate message from a civilization that has long since perished. The brood is not the predator. It is the prey, running from a hunter so vast and so terrible that its creators engineered an all-consuming plague and aimed it at the empty spaces between galaxies, hoping to build a wall of dead matter to slow its advance. You have not been fighting a war. You have been shooting at the shield of a terrified, long-dead people. A profound, galactic silence descended upon the crystal grotto. Vorlag felt the very foundations of his reality crack. The enemy they had fought for generations, the defining crisis of their age, the great existential evil of the galaxy, was nothing more than a symptom. A footnote in a conflict so vast it was taking place on a scale they could not even imagine. The void brood was not the apocalypse. It was the echo of an apocalypse that had already happened somewhere else and a harbinger of one yet to come. What is it running from? Vorlag resonated, his voice barely a tremor. Rostova's calm expression finally broke, replaced by a look of infinite gravity, a sorrow that seemed to contain the weight of stars. She expanded the hologram. It showed their own galaxy, the Milky Way, a familiar spiral of light. And then it pulled back and back and back, showing the local group, the Virgo supercluster, the vast cosmic web. And then in the unfathomable darkness of the intergalactic void, a patch of space began to darken. It was not a shadow, it was an absence. A place where light from distant galaxies simply stopped. A wound in the fabric of spacetime itself, a creeping, spreading nullity that was moving slowly, inexorably in their direction. "We don't know what it is," Rostova said. "Our long-range quantum observatories can only detect its effect on reality. It does not emit energy. It does not reflect light. It consumes them. It is a zone of ontological decay where the laws of physics as we know them seem to unravel." The civilization that created the brood called it the static. The creeping end of all things. The brood is not moving to attack you. It is fleeing this, and in its mindless, terrified flight it consumes everything in its path. The truth descended upon the Cathar conclave. Their grand, tragic war was a sideshow. Their glorious empires were motes of dust on a road an unimaginable terror was about to walk. Their pride, their history, their conflicts, all rendered meaningless in an instant. They had been trying to shout down a storm, while a tsunami the size of the universe was rising behind them. The weeks following the revelation were a blur of frenetic, focused activity. The Galactic Compact, humbled and terrified into a state of lucid cooperation, was transformed. Old rivalries were forgotten, borders became meaningless lines on obsolete maps. The entire industrial and scientific might of a dozen ancient species was turned, under human guidance, towards a single desperate goal: understanding the static. The pacified demonstration fleet, its crews now the most ardent pacifists and proponents of interspecies cooperation, became the nucleus of a new, joint research initiative. Admiral Tikal, the once-proud warrior, now oversaw logistical operations for the construction of a network of human-designed quantum observatories along the galactic rim. His strategic mind now bent on a war not of conquest, but of comprehension. Humanity, once the mysterious outsider, became the calm center of the storm. They shared their technology, their philosophy, their data, holding nothing back. Their ships, which had once seemed so unsettling, now plied the space lanes of the Compact, their quiet, efficient presence a source of comfort rather than fear. The Pathfinder remained in orbit of Catharia Prime, a permanent embassy and a symbol of the new age. Ambassador Rostova worked tirelessly with Vorlag and the newly formed Alliance Council, her logic and unshakable serenity the bedrock upon which a new galactic order was being built. Vorlag found himself spending much of his time with the human ambassador, absorbing not just her knowledge, but her way of being. He learned that humanity's calm was not an absence of emotion, but a mastery of it. They had, in their own turbulent history, faced self-annihilation multiple times. They had stared into the abyss of their own nature and chosen to evolve past it. They had learned that the greatest power was not the ability to destroy one's enemies, but the ability to transform them into allies. Their technology was not a product of genius alone, but of a profound ethical and philosophical maturation. They had built their conceptual harmonizer not as a weapon, but as a promise to themselves that they would never again resort to primitive violence. One cycle, as they stood in the quiet contemplation grotto, observing the holographic map of the galaxy with the encroaching shadow of the static marked upon it, Vorlag felt a resonance of deep despair. "We cannot fight it, can we?" he projected, his blue light dim with sorrow. "It is not an enemy. It is a physical constant, an entropy of existence. How do you wage war on the universe's own decay?" Rostova looked at the map, her green eyes filled with a strange light, a mixture of grim determination and a flicker of something else, something Vorlag had never seen in her before. Hope. We don't wage war on it, she said. War is a limited concept. You are correct, it is not an enemy to be fought. It is a problem to be solved. And the first step to solving any problem is to understand it completely. She zoomed the map in, not on the static, but on a region of space on the opposite side of their own galaxy, a sector that had long been ignored, deemed empty and uninteresting. A single faint signal was highlighted there, a signal the new Joint Observatory Network had just managed to isolate from the cosmic background noise. It was not a distress call. It was not a warning. It was complex, structured, and impossibly ancient. We were all focused on the brood, and now the static, we continued to listen, Rostova explained. To everything, and we found this. It's a signal, but it's not electromagnetic, it's not gravitational, it's something else. A modulation in the quantum foam itself. A message woven into the fabric of reality. What does it say? Vorlag asked, his entire being focused on the faint, pulsing light on the map. We've only been able to translate a fraction of a single sentence, she replied. Her voice was steady, but for the first time, Vorlag could detect a trace of awe in it. The language is mathematical, conceptual. It seems to predate the formation of our galaxy. Perhaps it predates this cycle of the universe itself. She brought up the translated fragment, a string of symbols that resolved into a simple, devastatingly profound statement. The static is not an ending, but a passage. The key is not to fight the silence, but to learn its song. Vorlag stared at the message, the strange, alien words resonating within him. A passage, a song. The creeping, all-consuming void was not a mindless force of destruction. It was something more, something with a purpose, a design. And somewhere in the deep, ancient past, another civilization had faced it, not with weapons, but with understanding. They had not been destroyed by it, they had passed through it. And there is more, Rostova said, her gaze fixed on the signal's origin point. The signal is not just a message. It's a set of coordinates, a map. It points to a single, specific location within that empty sector of space. The hologram zoomed in further, pushing through nebulae of cold dust and past rogue planets, until it resolved on a single point of utter blackness. It was a star system, but one where the central star had long ago died, leaving only a cold, dark cinder. And around that cinder, in perfect, impossible formation, was a ring. A megastructure so vast it dwarfed any of the Compact's most ambitious creations, its scale bordering on divine. It was ancient, scarred by micrometeoroids over untold eons, and utterly dark. It was a silent, sleeping titan in the galactic graveyard. It's a gateway, Rostova whispered, the word hanging in the crystalline air. Or a library, or a sanctuary, we don't know, but whoever sent that message built it. They left it for those who would come after, for those who would also face the static. They left us a key. Vorlag looked from the terrifying map of the static to the image of the silent, hopeful megastructure. He looked at the human ambassador, this representative of a young, fragile species that had, in the span of a few short years, completely upended his civilization's understanding of the universe. They had faced down the Compact's might without firing a shot. They had unraveled the galaxy's greatest mystery. And now, they had found a single, desperate light in a darkness that threatened to consume all things. He finally understood the true nature of humanity. They were not warriors. They were not conquerors. They were explorers, not of space, not of territory, but of possibilities. Their greatest strength was not their impossible technology, but their unyielding, logical, and deeply ethical belief that there was always another way, always a path forward that did not involve destruction. They did not see an enemy, they saw a puzzle. They did not see an apocalypse, they saw a question waiting for an answer. His own light brightened, the blue of his being shifting from a somber sapphire to a clear, brilliant azure, the color of a new dawn. The fear of the static remained, a cold and heavy weight in the core of his consciousness, but it was no longer a paralyzing dread. It was a challenge. The galaxy was larger, stranger, and more terrifying than he had ever imagined. But for the first time in a very long time, it was also filled with hope. The age of empires was dead. The age of petty conflicts was a forgotten dream. The war against the brood was a historical footnote. A new era had begun, an alliance of all life, not against a mindless swarm, but in a unified, desperate, and magnificent quest for knowledge, a race to understand the song at the end of the universe before the silence fell for good. And leading the way were the quiet, calm, and utterly indomitable newcomers, the strange, soft-bodied creatures from a forgotten world called Earth.